Welcome to the show, Andrew. First of all, let's start with that.
Oh, thanks for having me, Chris. It's great. It's awesome to be on here, I have to say, because I've listened to your show, all the great episodes from way back, and I found other people on the internet because of you. The Character Crusade podcast in particular.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I'm now follow them and chat with those chaps, and that's excellent. So you have done a wonderful service bringing all these different people who have podcasts to the rest of us. So thank you.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things where it feels like, well, especially back when I started it was like, well, even back then there was whatever, 2 or 3 years ago, whenever that was, there's lots of podcasts about podcasting, and people would do the like interview thing with other podcasters, but it feels like, and it still feels like to this day, that most of them are like, there's a bit of the gear nerd stuff, but a lot of them, it's all about how can you get successful with podcasting or make money in podcasting. And that's like certainly a side goal. Like obviously if someone said to you or I, hey, here's $100,000 or 100,000 quid, as you say, I'll help you. You can go make your podcast. That'd be great. But like, yeah, some of us are just kind of, it's a hobby and it's fun, and we like to pay for the hobby with some support and stuff, but it's not going to fix our day job, I guess, or get rid of our day job. So, no. But that's great to hear.
Alas, not.
And yeah, because I was trying to think. You weren't ever on the first run or whatever, second run, I guess, of the show, right? Interviewed.
No.
Because you have started. So your podcasts are the Motoring Podcast, and then Rear View is the second podcast that you started a little while ago. And what, I guess, before we get too far, what are the two shows? What are they about?
Well, the first one is the Motoring Podcast, which in a moment of genius naming by my colleague, Alan Bradley, who's the chap I do it with, we went straight down the Google Juice route, and it is what it says on the tin. We talk about motoring every week in a similar sort of style to a lot of the tech news shows. We knew each other via Twitter, and we were DMing each other, complaining that no one had made a motoring show like the tech shows we both listened to, and we were complaining and moaning and whining about it. And in the end, because nobody selfishly made our show, we got on Skype with each other and we said, should we give it a go? Yes. Okay then. And we decided we were going to record 3 episodes, and if we didn't like it, and if they were utter garbage, we would never speak of it again. But we enjoyed it, and they weren't, I mean, they're not great, but they weren't awful. So we launched that and carried it on. And so that's weekly news, but we also then introduced episodes that we call special editions, because that ties in with cars as well. Because again, we're not very imaginative when it comes to naming things. So special editions can be car reviews. It can be us going to events. It can be deep diving into particular subjects like alternative fuels out there, or we drove around mainland Great Britain in an electric car over 6 days to see what that was like. So we would release an episode of that every day. That was a special edition. So it's that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then typically every Wednesday morning, the news show goes out of what we've thought is interesting in the last 7 days.
Nice. And then Rear View is the
interview show.
Show, right? That's separate.
And I released that on the first year anniversary of Motoring Podcast starting.
Oh, okay.
So I chat to people from all over who are vaguely interested or connected with the car industry, or car world. So I've got journalists, TV people, designers, teachers. There was a Forza motorsport commentator for Forza Motorsport Racing Championship. He was on recently.
Oh, nice.
Photographers. So I'm just trying to capture. Racing drivers as well. Sorry, and I'm just trying to capture everybody that likes cars that has something to do with it, just to show. Well, there's 2 reasons. The first one is I'm nosy, and the second one, 3. I'm nosy. I work from home, so I'm lonely, and also it's just to show everybody how wide motoring is in our society and how far it reaches, because people just probably aren't realizing it.
Yeah, and it's like a reoccurring theme on here is like a podcast is a great excuse just to talk to people who you wouldn't otherwise have access to in other venues. As many of these folks probably wouldn't have just called you up for a chat on a Friday afternoon, as fun as that. And you would have probably had the exact same conversation more or less, but saying podcasts behind it obviously allows you to gain entry, I guess, or access to folks that you wouldn't otherwise have access to, which is really cool.
Absolutely. And I think Twitter, well, the UK centric car Twitter thing, people are still quite open to chatting with you.
Right.
Virtually everybody I've had on, I've been in contact with via Twitter first, because that's my social media of choice.
Yeah.
I don't do the face, so that's the only way that I know these people and chat to them. And so there's usually a bit of history there, so they sort of know me. I'm not just random person from internet coming on and saying, "Come talk to me."
Yeah.
So that's how that happens.
Yeah.
And now I've got 60 something. Sorry, that's dreadful. I should remember 60 something episodes of Rear View behind me, and 221 as of today of the Motoring Podcast. It carries a bit of. And we won an award in the Guild of Motoring Writers.
Nice.
This time last year, as the breakthrough. We won the Breakthrough Award. So they recognise different mediums, and we won that. So that's really helped us in the last 12 months, actually, by saying that.
And you mentioned just the sort of Britain focus. Like, is there you obviously are, well, I think the interview you sent me was someone from Israel, or a British guy in Israel. But is it sort of British focused in terms of like the kinds of, do you stick to that kind of community? Because obviously with the web, it could be anybody from anywhere. And is that sort of primarily where you find your audience too, or is it tend to be universal? Obviously cars are universal, but is the sort of listening audience for you guys Britain focused?
Motoring podcast mainly is the UK. It's actually interesting if you're a bit of a stat nerd, which I think we all are here.
Almost have to be.
Looking at the Motoring Podcast, people listen to that mainly in the UK and mainly via their a podcast app. Rear View, we get a wider breadth, again mainly UK, but we do get much wider breadth. But more people listen to that than we expected on their desktops.
Interesting.
But what I think it is, having chatted with a few listeners, is that people dip in and out of people they know or are interested in, and that's how they go about the interview one. So they're not necessarily subscribing to that one, whereas they want to subscribe to the weekly news, and every other week get an extra episode.
Yeah, I find that's interesting. I mean, similar stats even on this show too, where it's like obviously if a guest brings their own sizable audience and they tweet out about it or whatever, then obviously you see a bit of a spike in that episode. But I know like shows where I enjoy interviews, like Armchair Expert is one I've been listening to lately. But I'll subscribe and then just mark as read or listen to whatever folks that I'm not as interested in. So I always find it interesting that people don't take that extra step to subscribe. But again, that's I think the sort of struggle we're up against a bit with podcasting being still rather awkward and difficult to explain to folks how to subscribe, and the web player is still fairly common amongst certain demographics, I'm sure, for listening. Has you sort of dipped into the fame side of the motoring world and sort of had, I don't know how high, whatever the celebrity level would be, B, C, or D, or A, or whatever level of celebrity you'd have on the show, and sort of seen a corresponding bump in listenership?
Yeah, it depends. We've had a chap called Tom Ford on who did a lot of TV work in the early 2000s with a show called Fifth Gear. But he writes for Top Gear magazine and has helped other TV shows out as well, writing and stuff like that. And then he did Top Gear America, or Top Gear USA, the last one that ran that then got canned, which we never got to see over in the UK. But he's got a new show that's going to come out as well. God, I'm doing an advert for him here. But yes, someone like that, they then retweet. Everybody's really lovely, and they retweet when they're on and say nice things. Thankfully, I've had nobody hate being on with me yet. Yeah. So plenty of time for that. So yeah, there are times, and then particularly sometimes with the editors of some of the magazines, because they're quite well known in the wider car community of maybe not necessarily people I follow, but they're known outside that. So
yeah,
it depends.
You get I'm sure listeners or readers of that magazine, let's say, or whatever, would be very curious, obviously, about what an editor would, expound upon in greater detail than what they might get to in a magazine or whatever. Especially if the magazine itself doesn't have any sort of podcast, which is less and less common probably these days, but is still a
Oh
thing.
no, there's none of them do.
Oh, really?
No, not in the UK. There's one that does a video chat in a studio to explain the latest magazine that's coming out, latest month's magazine. And I've said to them, oh, is there going to be an audio version of this? Because it usually runs about 15, 20 minutes. And they said, oh, well, we'll look into it. But
right.
they've never done it. And I just thought, well, it's quite easy to strip that.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything. Just take the audio out. But they've got to work out that it's got to be worth their time and effort and that little
marketing
extra cost
dollars
in the grand scheme of things. So,
okay. So going back to your podcast and just even how you get that thing out into the world, speaking of whether it's worth your time and effort, we'll do the gear rundown, I guess, right off the top here. What's going from, mic to computer, etc. What kind of stuff are you using these days for recording?
Okay. I have a 2013 MacBook Air into which I directly plug my Blue Yeti, which I got for an absolute bargain a couple of years before I even started because I wanted to start. And it was on eBay that somebody hadn't done their podcast. So it was brand new in box and they never started. And I managed to snap it up for 50 quid. And I was delighted. So I thought, well, that'll do. Because at the time, at the level I was looking into these articles, you must buy the Blue Yeti. That is the only microphone out there, etc., etc. Of which now there are many counter articles.
But it sounds great. That's the thing. I think with the Blue Yeti, like I can hear podcasters all like, "Oh, you use the Blue Yeti, whatever." But like the thing is, if it's in the right environment and used properly, whatever that might mean exactly, but like it sounds just as good as because all I can see on our video version is just the mic cover or whatever. Are you using the Blue Yeti right now?
Yep.
That's what I assume.
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know which mic you actually have there, and I wouldn't have guessed Blue Yeti just based on the whatever sort of sound profiling that podcast nerds, I guess, maybe go after. But certainly it can sound bad, but so could almost any mic, I think.
Well, it took me ages to work it out because when we started the podcast, we didn't know anything. Blissful ignorance, frankly.
Yeah.
I'd read articles and obviously followed people like Ray and Daniel, people like that, and got to know things and thought, oh, it's okay, I know. But then it's not until you're going through things like you're editing and you're going, I can hear every breath.
Yeah.
I can hear the radiators rattling in the background, or I can hardly hear me at all. It sounds like I'm in a bucket, and then it's through trial and error. Then I've finally got to a setting that I'm reasonably happy at, because normally I'm recording my podcast in the kitchen downstairs, and that's quite an echoey room. There's not any soft furnishings. Today I've nabbed one of the children's bedrooms, so it sounds a bit nicer, which they may have to start sleeping in the kitchen for recording nights.
Yeah, so I was going to guess maybe you're in some sort of home studio you set up because there's no echo. It sounds pretty good.
No, there's just lots of clothes about.
Yeah, that's the beauty though of a podcast, even on a video version, is you're up against a wall. For all I know, you're like I said, in some sort of studio space, but on the other side of the screen, just like mine, there's a pile of mess. There's amps and cords and
wires everywhere. Everyone's been barred. Please don't walk in.
Yeah, my kids aren't allowed to walk around the right side of my desk here. I have it actually sort of in the middle of the room, and every time they'll try and exit the room, I yell at them to go out the left side. You can't, because the right side is where all the cables are. That'll be expensive.
This is where the magic happens. Don't touch the magic.
Yeah, exactly. Expensive cable-driven magic. So, all right. So, and then you're going into the computer, obviously. And no, that's my tangent. But you have headphones, obviously. Anything special there that you're using for headphones?
Sennheiser. I can't remember the exact. They're about £20. So it's not the ones that are typically mentioned, but I can still hear outside noises. Quite often I'm recording, my wife is away with work, so I need to hear if the patter of tiny feet are coming down the stairs an issue that I can press mute and go and deal with. So I find it useful that, but it still gives me I feel a nice quality sound, and I can pick up on mistakes and stuff like that when I'm editing. I've got a newer boom arm that I fit the Blue Yeti into, so I obviously break down my recording setup every time I've finished, because funny enough, people don't like eating their breakfast with the mic in the way. It's very selfish of them. My family is selfish.
Yeah.
They're not really. They're not. If they listen, they're not. So I've got that. Software wise, I've got a Logitech HD
C920. That's the sort of go-to one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was again offers because I'm cheap. Well, no, I have no money. That's what it is. I'm not cheap. It's just that was on offer not long ago. And actually, if anybody's in the UK now, Amazon's. You've probably got a link, haven't you, for Amazon?
Oh yeah, well, like Black Friday day deals and stuff today too.
It's something like £25 in the UK at the minute. So if you in an iron about it, go get it because it's really good.
Yeah, it's definitely worth. I'll say, just as someone who's dabbled in video, obviously with this, but even other stuff, it's worth the upgrade from if you have a newer Mac, like I have a 2015 iMac, and the camera, even though it's supposed to be a HD camera, the Logitech camera is definitely worth the upgrade. It allows me to do YouTube videos with it at least, and people comment on how clear it looks, without having to spend an arm and a leg for a more professional camera someday down the road, I guess. But so worth the upgrade for sure.
Yep. And that plugs again directly USB straight into the only other spare port on the Air, and it's another reason I'm petrified to upgrade.
Yeah.
So I have to get a dongle, and I'm petrified that will cause lag and things like that. To record on, I use Hindenburg. I started out with GarageBand, but I use Hindenburg. Again, it's very economical as far as audio editing software goes. It was about £60-70 when I bought it, but I found the jump up from GarageBand, it just saved me so much time. And
that's the do you use they have the Journalist version, I think, is sort of
just Journalist. I'm not Journalist Pro. No, I can't. No, can't do the Journalist Pro. We need more patrons before I can do that.
Yeah. Is that the one that has? I remember a while ago they were sort of pitching it as a way to, like, you could record your Skype call right in it somehow. It had like
I can. I could if I wanted to.
Right.
However, I do have Ecamm call recorder, which I had previously, so I just stick with that. It's one of those. I know it.
Yeah.
It's quite silly, really. I should try it out, but I know it works, so I keep it doing its thing.
Yeah.
Because that's how I record my rear view, is with call recording. Virtually everybody doesn't have their own mic and recording system on the other end, so I don't even try and ask them to do. The most I get to is say, if you happen to have headphones, please wear those to stop echoes, and if you happen to have a microphone, but don't worry, that would be helpful, but just don't panic about it. And generally it's okay. Sometimes it's been a bit there's been a couple of episodes that have been iffy.
Yeah, it feels like it's getting. I was thinking about this with a client of mine who has guests sometimes on, and when I edit their podcast, and it feels like it's getting to the point now where you can kind of like, normals, muggles, whatever, have an understanding of podcasts, and if they're going to be on a podcast, then especially if it's any sort of like a marketing vehicle or promotional thing, or where there's they have 10,000 listeners or whatever, that you can almost require a certain level of audio, because you're gaining entrance to this platform, basically. Like if you got invited onto the Tonight Show, or I don't know, whatever the comparable level regional TV show or whatever, to talk about your thing, you might get a haircut and clean up yourself a little bit or whatever for going on. And but I know it still is that sort of awkward conversation of, like, with a guest who maybe you don't know if they totally get audio, and they're going to be terrified at the idea of microphones and stuff, and so then they just say no. And we're still kind of like trying to ease people into this world of talking about their thing, I guess, online.
Well, it's fine getting people happy enough to talk about themselves. I mean, it's easy for you because it's podcasters.
Yeah, I have that.
So yeah, we're happy. We're happy to talk all day. No problem at all. But most people, you say to them, "Oh, I'd like you to come on Rear View," and they go, "Oh, but I'm not interesting." Like,
yeah.
And if I know them well enough, it's like, right, you can be quiet now. It's my game. It's my toy. I've decided you are interesting enough, so please, will you come on? Then this will go, okay, yeah. And then I try and keep it a conversational, like you're doing here, that your style. I try and keep it that sort of style, so it's just a conversation, and you happen to ask questions you probably would if you're in the pub over a beer, and that's the sort of vibe I try and get, and people seem to relax into it, and it generally works. So
yeah.
I'm
Do you do a lot of? Do you end up doing a lot of like? I'm guessing you sort of do. It sounded like you do the like sort of intro and here's my guest, and then just kind of like what I do too, where
yeah.
I'll do an intro and post. Well, I'll record that later and maybe an outro or whatever. But and then just sort of more or less, aside from a bit of ums and ahs or noises or whatever that you have to cut out or conversation tangents that are go nowhere or they reveal the next Ferrari model or something. Accidentally on a podcast, but you're more or less like just a conversation, unedited, straight to tape kind of.
Pretty much. That I've tightened that up slightly as I've gone on because I've got better at thinking. Well, that didn't really mean too much. That doesn't add to it. But originally, it was essentially the whole thing, and just made it sound decent.
Yeah,
sound listenable.
Yeah,
that was what I did. Because I've got episodes of really massively varying lengths. I've got them from an hour through to over 3 hours.
Right.
Because and that poor chap that did that. I mean, he was in Finnish time zone, so he finished talking at 1 in the morning, and he was up the next day for work. And
right.
It's like, I am so sorry. And he's like, no, I had a great time. I didn't realize what this was at the time. I was like, well, that's good.
Yeah.
Please don't hate me tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. That's where you get someone talking, and obviously they're having fun, and it works out. Is the upgrade when you jump from, I don't know how far back that was in your journey here, but like from GarageBand to Hindenburg, do you remember sort of the transition? What kind of, if someone's thinking of doing that, I guess, what were some of the tough points, and what were some of the, oh my goodness, this makes life so much easier kind of moments of switching?
The biggest thing for me was that it does the sound leveling on the way out, on the way in and the way out, which just helped me so much because I was forever struggling with that because we had really bad mic technique then as well. So we'd be in and out, and then we talk a bit like this and a bit like that, and we still do it now, but we spot each other doing it, and we're frantically waving on camera to each other, so we notice, so we don't do that. But the what it does automatically helps so much. And then I just found the shortcut keys just worked much more intuitively with Hindenburg. I not really had any struggles apart from the more plugins you add, the longer it takes to process an episode. I mean, I use a gate. I sometimes use the inbuilt because it's got an inbuilt voice profiler where it will try and even things out itself and make it sound a bit richer. Because I think it's more aimed at radio journalism,
right,
than say necessarily just podcasting, or it's not like a musician's tool that has been adapted to spoken word. So and I found, sorry, that's another point that I found useful. But I do that. I do what was the Isotope? I think, yeah, Isotope, because that was on sale. Going back to a theme here. Ray Ortega tweeted out and said it was on sale 4 or 5 months ago, something like that, and it was again a steal. So I grabbed that and I used the voice denoise more than anything else, and that has slowed down processing. So now if it's an hour-long show, it takes about 15 minutes to process on my tiny wee computer. Poor little thing.
Yeah, that's the thing I noticed when I upgraded from I had a 2011 Air and then went to an iMac, is like editing time when you're actually like chopping up a show or whatever, that doesn't really change. That's, it's going to take as long as it takes you. But yeah, the process of being able to hit export or apply a filter or denoise or something like that, instead of taking minutes at a time, it was, seconds or whatever. And so it just allows you to keep moving in your workflow a little nicer, but there's no reason that you can't get the work done. It's just, whether if you've got the time.
No, because while it's doing that, I'm finalizing the show notes. Say it's the weekly news show. I'm finalizing the show notes because now I've picked the title from our show, which is one of us has said something a little bit silly or a little bit insulting to the other one. So I'll use that as because I'm not clever like you. I didn't just start with the number and leave it at that. See, I always put some little saying, and then until very recently, I would put a whole list of relevant words to the news items.
Right.
But with Apple's "Will you please stop keyword stuffing titles and show notes and stuff like that, I've panicked that they were going to remove ours. So I've taken that out and just put the date and the little pithy one line and the episode number.
Right.
Because again, I did it wrong. I call it episode and a number. I shouldn't have done that. If you want to know how to do things the incorrect way.
It's not too late to switch. Actually, a client of mine, they have popular tech web podcast, and I've helped them just in WordPress. I mean, it depends on the CMS that you're using too as to how easy it is. Because I know sometimes naming the file or the episode with the number either at the front of it or just the number as the URL slug isn't always possible, and it kind of barfs on that because of duplication or whatever. But yeah, just switch now subtly, and we'll see if I know there's some number of whatever. If they have 10,000 listeners, there's maybe 50 people that'll appreciate that it now just, the URL ends in just the number of the episode. But for those 50 folks, hopefully it's that much nicer. But yeah, I know it's one of those things where you set a pattern in place and then you realize, oh shoot, which actually I was going to say with Isotope too, actually, I'm assuming it's the RX7 or RX6, whatever it was at the time.
Yeah. RX6.
Yeah. That sort of bundle it's great and it works awesome and it's worth the money for sure. It's kind of like the secret sauce of podcast editing almost at this point. But just be aware that once you're sort of, not that you have to upgrade every year, but once you're on that train of using RX, it becomes like one of your legs that you're walking with basically in podcasting, and you're going to basically keep having to, whether every version or every couple of years, you're going to be basically committing to that in a sense. Because this year I had RX6 and RX7 came out, and then I looked at some of the stuff. I was like, oh, I don't need it. I'm fine. And then they hit me with the upgrade promotion and some of the features, and I was like, oh, that looks really good. I should probably just get it. And so, yeah.
But we like new stuff as well.
Oh, yeah, that's the problem too. It feeds that side of our brain, the dopamine hit or whatever that we need to get something new and shiny.
But yeah, absolutely. Because the RX6, I was blown away at what difference it did make. From just essentially 2 or 3 clicks, and then this is wonderful.
Yeah.
I sound great now, or you don't hear the things I don't want you to hear.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I was, I did download, what's it called here? Hang on a second. Audacity, sorry. Because there's a very occasional, well, it happens more often with the rear view calls, but I use their noise remover. I think it is the plugin that's in there, or noise reduction.
Right.
Just to take out, there's quite often a hiss or something in the background. So it's just to remove that from a quiet spot, and then it removes it from the whole track. And then I can get into throwing it into Hindenburg and just edit normally.
Yeah.
But I still keep Audacity on this computer just for the just in cases.
Yeah,
because I know it works, and I haven't dug deep enough into Isotope yet to see whether I can actually fix that without having to do that.
The other one, I don't know if this audio will work here, so forgive me if it comes out really loud or maybe it doesn't actually work at all. But the other plugin in there that I've used a lot, but just like on a spot plugin or a spot fix, when it's, because I don't run it on a whole track, but is their plosive limiter or fixer or whatever, basically. So like the popping P's and things that if they don't have a wind filter or whatever on the front of the mic, or they just are, have maybe some gain or whatever turned up really loud and those. But some of those, like it's one of those things where in editing it feels like, is it really worth it? Do I need to stop and do this? And then, but so this is RX7, which I'm pretty sure RX6 had something like this as well. They boast about it being that much better in RX7, so take it for what it will. But anyway, so I'll play it before and after that. I think this will work here of a couple, and just it kind of just makes it like magic where it doesn't, you don't even hear it anymore, hopefully. But here, we'll just try this.
Tons of power from.
So there was a pretty good
tons of power from.
That's the after, where it's just gone. And did that come through for you? No. Oh,
but I'm nodding along because. Okay. Keep going. It's all right. Keep going.
It's probably, I've got you on the wrong.
I will hear it on the podcast later.
Yeah, exactly. See, everything works and then it doesn't. I'll do one more here just for fun, and you can nod along as well. So here's the before.
Pillowy.
Oh, that was the after, actually. I've got them in the wrong order. That's your aha looked backwards. So here's the before.
Pillowy.
And the after.
Pillowy.
Anyway, I think that got recorded on my end. We'll see. I'm gonna have to edit that in post. But anyways, when it works really well, and you're like, okay, that was worth every penny. Is the kind of the gist of what I'm getting at, and not to say that you have to upgrade to that or buy it even at all. Like you said, Hindenburg has some basic noise reduction. Most apps have some sort of noise reduction. This is kind of like if you've got a really bad episode and you're making money from it, or it's a hobby that's worth your time and effort and money, then it's kind of a no-brainer to pick up whatever the latest version and if you just watch for a sale like you did. I know, like Ray Ortega is really good about tweeting those out, and I'll put a link to his Twitter account because he's great at mentioning those, and I usually just retweet him because
and Daniel does as well, because
podcast.
he's got his deals Twitter handle, hasn't he? So he's if you're looking for gear or stuff like that, definitely follow Daniel as well.
Yeah,
he's great.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm trying to go back.
Oh, sorry. One last thing about Hindenburg, though.
Oh, yeah.
That I found a really great thing was that cutting the spoken word audio and stitching together to another piece. Say there was an in the middle, or your Skype went a bit skew-iffy. It's got some magic in it that meshes it together, and usually it does it really well. If you can cut it in the right place, which is at the very bottom of a trough, and stitch them together, then you don't know there's a cut more often than not. Whereas with GarageBand, I was finding it was, there's a cut, and there's a cut, and there's a cut.
Yeah.
So that was just from the audio I'm producing, the quality of it. I felt it increased it a lot.
Yeah.
At that point.
And those are the things that make, like you might be editing your own podcast and a little bit annoyed with it, but those are the kind of things that often will cause people to turn off a podcast and not stay subscribed. Unless the content is so amazing that they just have to, especially on a first time run or listen or whatever for somebody. Really rough audio stuff that feels like you just think, whatever, they'll get over it or whatever. Is worth massaging a bit and spending a bit of money on anyways to fix if you can, just because it definitely helps sort of ease that. I'm thinking of even situations where, like, I know my wife will play a podcast on the speaker and we're kind of talking while we're making supper and listening to a podcast maybe or whatever, and if it's really low level or lots of noise or whatever, we'll inevitably skip that podcast or that episode at least, just because it's too hard to try and listen over the noise of everything else in the house at around that time. So
because we put out a questionnaire not long ago, just around the time of our third year of going, and just double checking that what we were doing is what people wanted to listen to, and they were generally happy with what we're doing, and we left certain areas open for extra comments, and one of the ones that I wasn't expecting was people saying, we got one comment was, could you reduce the ums and ahs in it? That there's too many of that, and I always left some in because I thought that sounded more natural in how we would speak. And then sort of went, okay, that's no problem. I can take them out. It's going to take me a little bit longer, but I can take them out. But I just wasn't. Because it just goes to show my perception was different from somebody listening, as you just said there. We'll produce something and go, well, that's right, and someone will listen to it and go, well, no, because of this or this. You've just made it too hard for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is a fine line, obviously, because you don't want to be like, obviously, if one person is annoyed by one thing and another person is annoyed by another thing, you could end up spending hours trying to fix. But that being said, it is and that's, I think the ums and ahs is one of those ones where I struggle too as an editor of other shows that I like that I enjoyed listening to before I started editing them, and now I'm editing them, and I just find myself, or even if I'm editing a show with friends or whatever, I find myself getting sort of lulled on the editing side into just, it's a conversation and I don't even hear the ums and ahs as much. But I know for somebody who's maybe just like focused on listening, and it's similar to like a radio program, obviously you might be more annoyed or bothered by excessive, whatever that amount might be, or more than 5, I don't know, whatever the number is of ums.
Well, do you find yourself when you're editing, by the way, is the question I wanted to ask you, sorry, I know it's your show, but is when you're editing, do you ever get into a bit of almost flow where you are looking for particular sounds and you miss other ones? I mean, the ums and ahs might be a thing that you're going, well, that's not the important thing, because I've found I've done this. That's not the important sound I'm worried about. I'm worried about the fact that I know the guest keeps banging the table when
Right.
they're talking to me, and I'm looking out for that.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself sometimes having to catch yourself that you tune out certain?
Yeah, certain low level or like frequent enough sounds that are, you kind of get that idea of like being lulled to sleep by almost like there's a pen noise, let's say, of a pen rolling. I remember on one show I edited, and like it was really annoying at first, but then and this would, I think, happen to a listener too. Like it's really noticeable, but then you sort of get drawn into the conversation, you kind of forget it's there. Because I think on that one I had sent it over and they hadn't realized what had gone on, and like it was such a noise in such a way that there was no way to get rid of it. Just had to be there. And I kind of, and the hard part there is then if it's let's say you had a regular, a leaf blower in the background or something that was going on, then if you cut out your audio, if it's on 2 tracks, I cut your audio when you're not talking, then it's really almost more noticeable, because then all of a sudden it comes back again when you do start talking. And that's sort of the struggle sometimes of like maybe just leaving some of those noises in that are regular. Obviously, if it's really obnoxious, you get rid of it as best you can. But leaving some of those regular noises in just so that it becomes kind of like a constant and is less distracting than if you fade out, fade in, fade in, fade out, fade in, whatever. Yeah. That's kind of, certainly. But, and then also you kind of get used to, as you would in Hindenburg or GarageBand or other apps, you get used to seeing certain waveform looks or whatever from, if you're editing a show regularly, what a cough looks like, or whatever, when one guest always does this thing or whatever. And especially when someone else is talking, you can very quickly identify like, oh, they're probably, whatever, their cat walked in or something, and getting rid of that or whatever. Whatever the case.
Well, that's how I edit, actually, is I'll have it on normal speed for the first 3 or 4 minutes to make sure I've got the sound right. I've got the levels as close to matching up as my ears will tell me they are, because I'm not pretending to be any remote expert in any of this. It's just how I go through this process. And then after that, I'll hit it up to 1.6 speed, which is I can still understand the words that they're saying, but then I'm looking and I know the pattern of when Alan says or I say, my phrase is, so yeah, and I'll be cutting that out, because that's I'm about to ask a question and I've just gone into autopilot while my brain's going, so I'm at least speaking.
Yeah.
So I cut that out, and then I'm just looking for those particular sounds and what they look like, and so I can cut and paste or cut and delete quickly.
Yeah, and that's as I'm doing it right now. I know in this show especially, my vocal tick is saying yes and into something, as I just did, because I'm trying to I often would agree with the guest about what they just said, and then want to add some extra color from my own side of the fence to it, and that's where it's trying to balance, figure out either a new thing or maybe that's just a thing I do, and that's okay too. I don't know. We'll see. If you're out there and you're listening and you think that's so annoying when you do that, then let me know on Twitter, and I may or may not stop, but at least I'll know somebody's listening. That's the main goal in all this. I noticed it looks like on your website, so publishing, then from there, you obviously create an MP3. Do you do anything as far as tagging the file? Is Hindenburg have like MP3 tagging and stuff, or do you not worry about that? Or
I think they can. I don't. We are very no. It's just an MP3. We haven't gone to AIFF or whatever it is that Apple want us to do now. I can't keep up. No, just keep it as an MP3. I generally keep it under 50 meg file, so it's either a medium or a low. They call it medium quality or low quality. Is how you can produce. You can do 3 levels, right. But I try and keep it below 50 meg on a file, because data, and nobody needs to spend all that time downloading to listen to us talk. It's not like we've got masses of sound going on. It's just 2 guys having a chat, really. Generally. So it doesn't need to be super special. But we use Squarespace. Again, if you want to know how not to, or we're told not to do it, but Squarespace just makes it. And this is I don't get any recompense from Squarespace, by the way, on this, and I presume you won't either.
No.
But they just make it so easy to do. Yes, their stats aren't great. They are improving, but now I've got over I must look at my stats every day for 8 hours a day, and because we are connected through FeedBurner as well. Again, how not to do things. Although we are investigating moving the RSS stats, possibly, I'm not sure, but I think Blueberry are the one place that will do it without us having to host with them. Because that's all we're after. We just want a place that will tell us our stats. We don't need to host with them.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're tied in with Squarespace, so
Yeah.
we're happy with what we do there. But creating web pages and creating new episodes and uploading it is just so easy on there. Because I hate WordPress even.
Right.
I hate that with a passion, because I do help somebody else with their podcast on the quiet, and they use WordPress, and I would happily burn it down. I find it so
awesome.
Horrible. It's so horrible, and so many things can go wrong and do go wrong, and I don't know what I'm doing. So it's just witchcraft.
Yeah. And that's probably a combination of the two things, obviously, right? Someone has familiarity with WordPress, hates Squarespace, or flip it around the other way. I was going to say podtrack.com. I think you could look at as a integration possibly with Squarespace, where you could throw the URL in front of that and get some tracking possibly. But and a lot of I guess you have hosting for your MP3 with Squarespace. They allow that, right? Yep. And so
it's all in there in the one fee. That's why I'm saying it's so easy. We just chuck it in there, and it's there, and we don't have to worry about it. And they worry about if it goes. I mean, it is exactly all the ads you hear on the other podcasts. It is exactly that, and we can make a website look remotely what we want it to look like with dragging and dropping, as opposed to having to understand code, which props to you for doing that, because you must have the patience of a saint.
No, well, you can ask my kids how patient I am, but yeah,
you're on this podcast face now. Come on, you're very patient.
Yeah, exactly.
Reality doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, it is what and that's where having a partner like Kyle Roderick, who works with me here at Good Stuff, it obviously helps a ton, because he gets lost in the weeds sometimes of code, and I don't have to go as deep as he does, and then saves me getting really mad and smashing the screen, as some of us would do if we had to live in that. So, but yeah, I'm happy to have a bit of that help and fiddle a little bit, but it's, I want to, as I've said before, I think I want to be able to do the podcast thing, not manage websites when I'm trying to do a podcast thing. And I think that's where Squarespace is great.
That's how we approached it, because we thought it's going to be hard enough for us to get up to speed on podcasting. We've got enough to worry about there. Let's not add a second thing, which is, what do we do with the website? And if there's a way that we can get around that, and using Squarespace, you don't have to host with them. You can use Libsyn or any of the other hosting things and do it that way if you don't want to host with Squarespace. But when it comes to the interface with the back end of the website, it's just so easy for me.
Yeah, and that's where, as you said, it started out now. Obviously, tools and things are different than when you started 3+ years ago with the podcast. Is a lot of the podcast hosting companies back then, even that's all they did is host the MP3 file. They didn't even have a website option. Whereas we use Transistor for our podcast hosting, audio hosting, and we could host a website with them, and that's where there's other companies like this. So, but Transistor is the one we're using. But the nice thing,
when you showed the other week the back end stuff, that was really pretty and really simple and easy to follow as well, which is not always the way with some of the more well known or longer term hosting sites. Their visuals are not as fresh, should we say.
Libsyn looks like it's running on Windows 3.1. We can just all say that. And then there's something, new services obviously have, but Libsyn has been around forever and likely will be around forever for all we know. But yeah, something like
a proper business model.
Yeah.
We like that.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, something like Transistor or whatever, you can flip on a button and they'll build a website for you. And that's great. And it makes it super easy to do. One thing I'll say with Transistor is, in a little plug for them, because I don't get paid by them, but there is an affiliate code, so I guess that'll be in the show notes. But at any rate, their pricing model right now that they're using is one price and then multiple shows, and then you just pay extra if you go over a bunch of downloads. So if you're going to have a moderately popular show, you never have to pay extra beyond that. So $20 a month, I think, and you can have as many shows as you want, which is great for if you're trying out the world of podcasting. You might try one show, you might try another show, it's trying to see what sort of lands and what sticks for you and listeners. Rather than, I know when I started podcasting anyways, it was kind of like $10-15 a month, and it was stressful because I was like, well, if I do this, then I'm committing to this show and this idea, and if I delete it, then the show disappears forever. And so this kind of like frees you up a little bit mentally, I guess, if you're like me 4 or 5 years ago, whatever that was. But anyways, I digress. So that's
but it takes time to find what you want to do as well. What you may think, oh, this is the way we want to go with a podcast. You get into it and go, actually, I've run out of things to say now.
Yeah.
Actually, now I've been talking to these people, I want to try this. Or you find a different way of presenting it as well. It's maybe not just the 2 microphone. You want a group of people, and that's a different thing. To be given the opportunity to play around, that sounds like they do, that you can really experiment. That I think that's a wonderful thing to have that option now.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, check them out and make me rich with the affiliate code is all I'll say. That's my as much of a sponsor pitch, I guess, as unsponsored sponsor pitch as you get in this show, anyways. For now, let's see where I was going to go next. With your podcast, so you're able to run that both podcasts, though, I guess, on Squarespace, right? You're running both shows off the one.
There's 2 shows in the one website.
Yeah.
So because it's just a different page that creates a different feed.
Yeah. Yeah, which is again a handy way of it's substantially somewhat more complicated, I guess, if you don't know what you're doing for sure in WordPress to set up something like that with 2 shows coming out of the same CMS basically. And so that's another check in the box of Squarespace, anyways, or a site like that. So So I guess on that note, I guess now that you've done, so the motoring podcast is you and your friend and never having guests or rarely, or is it?
Some of the special editions we've had some sort of roundtable versions. We did one on alternative fuels 6 months after we started, and that was the first time we knew that the industry listened to us. So people from car manufacturers were listening to our podcast.
Oh, nice.
Which was a bit of an eye-opening moment. You sort of go, oh, that's brilliant. Oh, what did we say? Hang on. But fortunately, it was all good. And it was very complimentary what they said as well. And that's when we started to really reach out to manufacturers and say, hi, because when we started, because Alan and I are not spring chickens. We're not 18-year-olds who started a free WordPress website and gone, we've got this website, give us a Lamborghini, please.
Right.
We're old enough to realize that it's a business and everything costs money. So we introduced ourselves when we first started to all the UK-based PR teams and said, hi, we're here. This is what we're trying to do with this. We hope you listen. If you've got any feedback, it'd be great. And hopefully in time we can work with you. And leave it at that. And we got a lot of good lucks. It's great to see somebody new coming in, trying to do something a bit different, because at the time there was really only one car podcast, and it is the granddaddy of car podcasts in the UK. Gareth Jones on Speed. He used to present a lot of TV back in the 90s and early 2000s. And one of his co-hosts is the, I've got to get his title right, script editor for Top Gear and now the Grand Tour. And they've got their friend who is incredibly clever on there as well. And they've been going for 11, 12 years now. So they have many downloads, many thousands of downloads, and they are well known and everything. But we still had to introduce the concept of podcast to quite a few of the car manufacturers' PR departments. And so not only were we introducing ourselves as new people, but we were introducing, here's a new medium you've probably not thought about that could be viable for you.
Yeah.
and some were into podcasts, and that's where they found us first. That's been interesting. But like I say, getting the award last year from the Guild of Motoring Writers in the UK, when we can say that in an email, suddenly people take us seriously, a bit more seriously, and go, oh, right, these aren't, they're in this for the long haul type thing, or they're doing something worthy of us at least giving them some attention. And on the back of that, we've now got people getting in touch with us.
Yeah. Which there's 2 interesting points there of like reaching out to like PR folks in your niche, whatever your topic might be. Because often PR folks, or journalists too, for that matter, in your industry are hungry for a new story or an angle to promote their thing, whether it might not be a sponsorship thing, but it might just be an interview spot or somebody who wants to come on, or they might promote your show as a result of hearing about it. And knowing that they can trust you with their their brand or their content or their whatever, their star or whoever they're representing, and yeah, that you're a reputable, that you're able to write an email with coherent words. It's not just a YouTube channel that's going to disappear in a week or whatever when you get bored with it or something. So, which is cool. And I often struggle with how to find, even like reaching out, say with podcasting or whatever. Obviously there's many different podcasting gear companies and things like that. And it always often feels like, I think on the internet, you can feel like overwhelmed at all the other shows that are in your industry or in your niche or whatever. And of course, they wouldn't want to be on your show. They'll be on those more popular shows or whatever you perceive to be more popular. And I've been surprised, like nothing crazy, but just like reaching out to companies like Shure or whatever, that they've sent a mic to test or whatever. And like those kinds of things can happen again because of the medium of podcasting. And if you're willing to put off a professional vibe in some manner.
Yeah, but you've done this for a particular reason. Right. And that's your unique selling point. And you present it in a particular way that either people are going to like or they're not.
Right.
And because of the reason that you've decided you wanted to do this show in the first place, it's like with us with the car one, is there wasn't a show there. So we had to do it. And we're still bitter at the fact that we've had to do it because everyone else is so selfish. But we've gone out and you're saying the same thing here. No, I'm approaching you because I think that this is a realistic, because you're an adult, you're not a child about this. You're going, I've got this show, I do this, I have these many listeners, this is the sort of interaction we get. I'd like to do this with you. Does that appeal? Yes or no? Mm-hmm. And they will appreciate that professional approach because you're saying, this is what I can offer you. And that's what we've done with the car people, is we've gone, this is what we can offer you. No one else is, if we do a car review, it's generally between 35, 45 minutes. So that's 35, 45 minutes that somebody is hearing me and Alan talk about one particular car. Mm-hmm. And we know that people will listen to 87% of that episode. So they are just dropping off when we do our routine goodbye, basically. Right. You can't get that with a YouTube. You can't get that with a magazine. You can't get that with a website. People don't spend that amount of time taking in that amount of long form content. Mm-hmm. So that's what we offer, and that's what you're saying there. That's what people have to remember is we're all very good. I'm British, so I'm one of the world's worst at, oh, I'm terribly sorry. Oh, I'm a little bit embarrassed to ask. And, well, if you'd be so kind and all that sort of stuff. But there's times you have to get over yourself and say, hang on, I mean, you Canadians are just as bad as us.
Yeah, so, exactly.
So we have to sit there and go, actually, I do add value. I do give value. Otherwise, these people would not be listening. And we've been told by PRs, they said, you don't have the world's biggest audience, but for particular stories we want to tell or messages we want to get out, you are absolutely perfect for that. You are spot on. And we know that your audience really, really listens and understands and is intelligent and gets the concepts you are talking about. And that's incredibly valuable to us as PR.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen in other mediums as much.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I think also too, that's the good side of like reaching out to those PR folks or the admirable side. But also, like I said, sometimes I know when I've reached out to PR folks and even in non-related, like they just need a thing. They need to check a box where they've done some sort of marketing effort with something and do a little write up for their boss or whatever. And so your podcast comes along as the perfect opportunity for them to. They just have to, send you some assets, maybe send you maybe a test drive or test out some gear or review some software or whatever your niche might be. And they're more than happy to do it. They just were waiting. They don't know where to begin looking because they go to Apple Podcasts and all the shows look the same. They have no real, other than, like a top in tech or whatever, they have no real barometer for what is good or bad or what things that might be not worth investing in, and they, just like you as a whatever, if you're a 5,000 download or maybe you're a 1,000 download or maybe you're a 50 download episode podcast, there's PR people for brands, firms, people, whatever celebrity, you know, whatever the thing is, who aren't A-list or B-list or C-list, just like you. And you can pair up with those folks as well that are hungry for a place for their thing to be talked about or reviewed or interviewed or whatever the medium is or the format is. So yeah, it's definitely worth asking.
And it also depends if you can show you get really good interaction as well, even if you've got a smaller audience. I mean, we're veering a little bit into the click pounds or dollars per click type advertising. That's not applicable to so many podcasters. However, going out and asking for sponsorship is applicable to many. They just think that's the only model that can happen. You can do bespoke. I mean, this isn't something we've done yet, and is probably something we have to go down the route if we're going to grow in any way further than what we're doing. And that's probably a decision we have to have behind the scenes. Is this what we're doing good enough, or do we want to do other things? But is you can go and say, well, yeah, okay, it's not viable for $20 per 1,000 downloads because I'll end up with 50 pence. But look here, look at the interaction, look at Twitter, look at all the conversations we have following an episode go out, or look at this, or look at my the comments underneath an episode, or whatever it is however it happens for whatever niche you're in. And you can turn around and go, here, smaller seller of things, we've got an audience ripe for you to be in front of. Let's try it. Shall we try it? We're not going to charge you thousands and thousands of dollars or whatever. It could be hundreds. Yeah. Let's give it a go for a month and see what happens. Sometimes I get a little frustrated when I see these, like particularly the listicles from people who don't really know. And I'm not saying I'm an expert or anything either. I'm not, but I've listened to enough podcasts about podcasts now. Yeah. That I've always got degree education in it. But that's what podcasting gives you. Yeah. Or listening to podcasts is, you must do it this way because I've read this on another article, so I'll put it here at number 3. And it just shows it's a bit different from the other listicle I've stolen this all from. Yeah. There's different ways of us doing this, and if you're interested in going for money, because of course not many, that's not for everybody. Like you said earlier, this is the hobby. Let's have fun. I'm doing this because I enjoy it, type thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of money, the one I know you mentioned, I think earlier too, the Patreon support. And so you've chosen to go that route as far as getting sort of a bit of crowdfunding in. How long ago did you start that? And what has been sort of the story there for you guys?
When did we do that? That's been going a while now, at least 18 months, I think.
Okay.
And we've got I'm going to sound very ignorant here, but Alan's got all the keys to it, so I don't check it that often, which is dreadful because if anything happens to him, I've got no passwords. It's something we do talk about quite regularly.
Yeah, it's important to have access to things.
Yes, we have discussed this.
It looks like you have about on current, like that's what's nice about Patreon is everyone can see. Obviously, it's kind of public, but 10 patrons,
8 or 9, something like that.
Yeah, you're up to 10. Yeah. 37 per month, so it's
which pays our hostings and puts a little bit to one side for us to build up a bit of a bunch if we need a bit of equipment. We always need equipment because we're a podcaster. We always need equipment. But maybe we're going away to a driving day with a company and they're putting us up the night after, but we need to be there at 9 o'clock and it's the other end of the country. We need a hotel, so it pays for the hotel, or maybe insurance or things like that. We try and build up a little bit of bunts into it. Obviously, the more would be much better. And
it looks like you have obviously a couple of levels of support. Just that's what's kind of interesting with Patreon is obviously deciding on whether you just like throw it wide open for whatever, or you try and like tier it and so a few different levels of support where you obviously just get notified if you just give $1. If you give $2, you get puts your name in a special supporter section on the site.
We don't actually do all the things we said we're going to do yet.
That's what I was going to say. A lot of
we're dreadful
Patreon folks. You set it up and like this would be great, and I know that's what we just soft launched our Good Stuff Patreon. Like I have my own one at patreon.com/iChris, but what's interesting there is folks have supported me, and they kind of just want to support. It's a place to support what I do, and they give money, they're friends or friends of friends or listeners or whatever. And I've asked them multiple times, like, okay, do you want me to give you behind the scenes, whatever, all that kind of fun stuff that you think, and they're more like 99% of them are, they just want to help me, and all that extra stuff is fine, but that's not why they're subscribing or supporting. But yeah, so we soft launched the Good Stuff on patreon.com/goodstuff if you want to check it out. Actually, I should just double check. I don't think we put an FM at the end. Yeah, patreon.com/goodstuff. And we got our first supporter, which is great. Thanks, Moon Dazed, if you're out there and you're listening. And she supported at the level of, I think it was $5, I want to say, where we said, like what you guys have, where a monthly-ish hangout with Good Stuff hosts chatting about stuff. So now it becomes a question of, like, so what do? You have one supporter. Do you get everybody together, monthly, and start, like, you kind of have to practice what you preach, where you're going to put that out there and people are supporting you. So you got to do it, which is great. But yeah, getting everybody together to chat for one patron could be kind of funny and awkward. So we'll probably just do it as a group hangout on Google Hangouts or something, and whatever. But yeah, it is kind of like following through, and whether people, like I said, are supporting you just because they want to throw you a couple bucks because they like listening to the podcast, but they don't really want more stuff from you that they have to listen to or watch or whatever. But yeah, I guess I'm rambling now.
That's the other problem as well. Yeah, the other problem for us is that we've both got day jobs, so we're very conscious when it comes to creating more content. That becomes tricky, particularly if if I say I've got a week where suddenly I've got 3 review guests can do it, and typically that's evening, and and then there's one night that I'm doing the podcast, the news show recording, and suddenly there's my week gone.
Yeah.
And it's then you think, but because we've got a bit of a backlog of car reviews to do, because I've had a few because Alan's invariably calling in from some hotel around Europe or Britain, and I'm based at home, so I can test the cars because I'm here. Otherwise, it's a bit of a waste for him to leave it in a car park at Heathrow or something like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't. The PRs don't tend to react too well to. You've just parked our car up and left it. That's not what we wanted. How are you going to give that a review?
Yeah.
So it's finding the balance for us, because if we were, the ideal dream would be that we do this full time. But because we have proper grown-up jobs that pay mortgages and things, we'd have to suddenly increase our income via the podcast dramatically.
Yeah.
Many folds more to make that viable, because we just couldn't afford to do it the other way, because we've got dependents, so you can't just
like
can't just throw these things
you're
away.
Not 18.
No, that's the downside. But I think it means that when we do decide to do a particular special edition in a certain way, we've thought it through, and it's for something we really want to discuss, and we think the listeners really want to hear about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we don't have the ability to have too much fluff.
Right.
We can't carry it because we don't have the time to deal with it.
Yeah.
So we really go after stuff we really want to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's good. I think it's an interesting world of, like, because I noticed maybe you still do this sometimes, or like you have for Patreon folks, they can tune into the Google Hangout recording sometimes, or.
Yep, that's right. Every as long as technology will allow.
Yeah.
Depending on hotel Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Because Alan he has called in via his iPhone from Europe whilst recording. We do double enders now, which, again, if anybody's new to podcasting, this is the one thing that you hear everybody saying. You go, it'll be all right. No, do it. Trust me, just do it. It's one of those that sounds like it's a faff, but it has saved us so much since.
Yeah.
We were only doing Skype Ecamm call record, and the sound difference for when we suddenly went to double enders, even before I improved my ham-fistedness on editing, is remarkable. So just do that, please, everybody.
Yeah. So if you're brand new, double ender is just basically when both people record their end of the conversation with whatever means, QuickTime, yeah, anything on your computer. You're recording your local copy, they're recording their local copy. You can still do a chat over Skype or Google Hangouts and have that recorded as well, and it's good to do that as a backup. But then yeah, the editor person takes both files, lines them up nicely, and it sounds much better than getting Skype compression. Although I should knock on wood or whatever, but like this call between you and I was just noticing like the Skype video quality. Skype has gotten bashed left, right, and center by podcasters, and rightfully so, for many years. But whatever Microsoft is doing behind the scenes has dramatically improved Skype. So if it's been a while since you've tried it, and I'm not saying it's going to work flawlessly for you because I still don't completely trust it, but since I've restarted Show Me Your Mic using Ecamm Live, which then requires me to use Skype for the conversation, the video and audio quality has been tremendous, to the point where 90% of the time I'm kind of like, well, I could get your audio, but honestly, the audio I got from you is like 95% of the way there. And so having said that, of course, I'm going to find out after I stop this that Skype pooped the bed somehow. What I have is just static.
But I agree. I've noticed that recently as well. The interface I hate when they updated to this recent
the UI
interface.
is awful.
I don't understand how they signed that off.
Yeah.
But I have been doing rear view calls with video recently, as opposed to I was only ever audio because I was so petrified of bandwidth and not just, well, my end's usually all right, but because I would physically plug it in. I don't now. I'm on Wi-Fi, and it's still amazing. So I totally agree with you. Whatever they're doing back end to improve the quality, well done, Microsoft. Now do that to the rest of it, please.
Yeah.
But you can record on Skype now as well.
Yeah.
Which we never had. So.
Yeah. Podcasters these days have it so easy.
They do. Not back in the good old days.
One thing I was asking the guests recently is if there's, obviously it looks like you use Twitter a lot. You mentioned that earlier. Is there anything that works better than anything else as far as promoting the show that you found without obviously just dumping a bunch of money on some sort of ad campaign or whatever that none of us have? But
I don't know. I only use Twitter.
Yeah.
That is all. Our growth is purely organic. We have never put an advert out there. Mm-hmm. We've never gone down that route, even though we've got emails with, Google Ads, here's $100 worth of ads you could have, and or Facebook thing. We've never done that. I think we've actually stopped publishing to a Facebook group because Facebook have made it so hard to automatically publish to them. They want you to publish separately in them because they well done. Anyway, I can't stand it anyway, so I don't know. Alan has to deal with that side of things, thankfully, not me. Because I just sit there with my tinfoil hat on and say, "Look, I'm safe." But Twitter is our main social media, and that is the way we have got the message out and got in touch with people, and that's how we interact with most people as well. So it's just worked for us. Again, if what I was saying before, if we decide that we want to really increase or expand how we do things, or suddenly try and push for a much bigger audience, I think we'd have to look down those routes, but that's not a conversation we've had yet.
Yeah. There's always just something else you have to do and not enough time to do it. It seems when you have podcasting as a hobby. So I guess,
if you're taking it seriously,
even
if it's a hobby, if you're taking it seriously, and that's what we've tried to do. And show that we're doing okay. We're not on this full time, but we take it we're taking this properly seriously, and we're giving it appropriate attention, and we are trying to produce something of quality, or what we feel is quality. It's always subjective, but what we feel is quality and does justice to what we're talking about, and because we'd hope as listeners, that's because we listen to podcasts as well as listeners. That's what I want the people I'm listening to do. Yeah. That's part of the reason I'm listening to them, is because they're committed to it and taking it seriously and doing as good a job as they can for that episode. And that's all I'm after, really. Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, I guess with where can folks find your podcast? We've mentioned a few times, I guess, but in just the typical wrap up, I guess, where on the internet, where can they find you and your podcasts?
To find the podcast, if you go to motoringpodcast.com, you will find there. You will be able to search through old news shows. That's under the news tab, and Rear View is there as well. So you can have a look through there. To find me, probably the best way is Twitter. If you would like to talk about podcasting, I am at Clueless. That's I've got to remember. Have I got underscore in there somewhere?
Yeah.
CLEW underscore
yeah.
LESS. Yes, sorry, I can't remember. I don't tweet myself. So I'll talk about non-car related things there, and hopefully how the Western world is burning to the ground socially. I'll stop that. I'm sorry, everyone. But if you want to talk about UK-ish centric car type stuff, I am at Cracked Windscreen, which again was back in the good old days before we could write however long a title we wanted to ourselves. So it's cracked W underscore screen. Sorry. I will send you links to all those.
Yeah, well, I've got them in the show notes. That's okay. But yeah, I know that's the funny thing too of like, I think I said in the last episode of like registering domain names or Twitter handles or wherever that you don't actually say out loud before you register them, and then having to go on a podcast and repeatedly say your Twitter handles or whatever. That's just why I was saying with Good Stuff, we had Twitter originally, we had Goodstuff_FM. I think we just changed it after a while to just Goodstuff.FM because it just got too complicated to say. But even that's funny because like, is it 2 F's and then the FM, or is it like all one creative word or whatever? Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. Depending on how frustrating a day it is, there might be enough extra.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Andrew, for coming on the show, and hopefully folks who are interested in if there's some sort of crossover between podcasters and motoring enthusiasts, that they check out your show. And yeah, you've got a great back catalog, obviously, of episodes to check out, and I'm sure you're in all the whatever podcast players that are out there that folks might be listening to. And that is the benefit of doing a podcast for podcasters with podcasters, is they know how to do all that stuff. Hopefully they subscribe and like.
We
and
may
all that stuff.
actually be in Spotify now.
Right,
Somebody did request that we were in there. I'm not sure if they've finally approved us or not, or whatever their system is, but we did apply a while ago,
right?
So we might be in there.
Yeah, I've heard that they're getting through the backlog and seem to be accepting or publish or whatever, publishing folks more frequently now when you request it. So that's great to see. So if you're listening to this, you can also watch a video version of this on our YouTube channel. I have no idea what our Good Stuff URL is, to be honest. If you go to goodstuff.fm, we have links to all our social stuff, the YouTube channel being one of them, where I publish the video version of this podcast. If you're watching this somewhere and you want to listen to it only, you can go to goodstuff.fm/SMYM, and this is episode number 122. So throw a /122 on the end, and you'll find this episode if you want to find the audio version and or links to everything that we've discussed. One link in there that I'll just point out is, I think, Andrew, you're on the list, right? There's a podcasting community that I'm kind of like, it's an idea that I've been percolating for a long time in my brain of basically, like you said at the beginning, a way to get more friends, because I sit at home in my basement and I'd like to have people to talk to, and why not do a way where they pay me to be my friend? That's sort of the backwards way. No, I haven't even decided if that's going to be a thing, but if the paying part is going to be a thing. But anyways, it needs
to be a thing, Chris.
Yeah, well, it has to pay for itself somehow.
It needs to be a thing. Otherwise, it'll fall to the side and people won't take it seriously.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be lots, but we've got to show commitment to this. Otherwise, it's unfair on you, and it's unfair on however many get into it and really look to do this. And just you haven't asked for this at all, but anybody that's seriously interested in podcasting and wants the help and everything, because this is what Chris's idea is all about, please do sign up to it, because there's tons of communities out there where they talk about the same sort of stuff, but it's regurgitating articles and things like this. From what you've explained it to me in the emails, and only to me, because obviously you're only talking to me there, Chris, when you write these emails. I know that. But in these emails, what I'm getting out of from your idea is that we're going to be, it's going to be a place where we can talk about the problems we're having, or what we're finding is working for us, and maybe it'll work for other people, and it's advice, and there's going to be it's no judging. It's just, we're all trying to do this from our own perspectives for the right reasons, and we're here to help each other where we can. That's what I've got out of your emails. Yeah,
that's good. That's good to get sort of the reader, I guess not listener, reader feedback from what I've been sending out, because I've been trying to sort of through email and kind of like on display, as it were, figure this thing out with folks and try to push people to either respond if they're serious, not just because it tends to happen in podcasting circles anyways, where you kind of follow other people just to see what they're doing, but you're not really invested in it. And that's fair. I'm not judging folks for doing that, but yeah, for this thing, I'd like it to be something where for a bit of money, like you said, just to have a bit of a gateway. So it's not just fly by night, leave, take what you want from it and leave. And also just to pay for some server costs or whatever for forums and stuff like that. But, definitely not a get rich quick or at all scheme.
Sign up to your $399.97 a month.
Because I've tried the building courses and stuff, and that's like the fair play to folks who are doing that. I think that's a necessary thing on the internet, and it's good. But it wasn't for me. I'm more interested in like, we're all in this together. Let's help each other figure this thing out. I might be a little further along in this one area, but you're further along in another area, and vice versa. And so, for me, it's a place to like kind of like hanging out, because we're all remote for the most part, and especially if you are remote from anybody else in your area who you're aware of who podcasts, kind of a place to just hang out, like link to your latest episode, but not because you're going to get thousands of new listeners because people are promoting it or whatever for you, just to like get some feedback on like, hey, that worked, this didn't, why don't you try this? What if you tried using Isotope for this? Or send me this file and I'll help you fix that, and I'll send you this and fix that, or whatever, those kinds of things. So yeah.
It's this whole community to help each other, because I've been bumbling along on my own here doing this, and you've been more than generous with your time over Twitter when I've asked you questions and stuff, and you've helped out where you can, and so has the likes of Ray and other people. But if we've got this one place we can all go to that we can ask each other these things, and we're all prepared to help each other, because we've all had problems, we've all needed help, and we've not had it and we've had to find it out the hard way. So if we can help each other out, then I just think it's a brilliant idea, and I hope it succeeds.
Thanks. Yeah. And so there's a mailing list sign up right now. It's just a MailChimp landing page right now, because I hadn't decided, or we hadn't figured out a name. And I just did a poll that ended just yesterday. Sent it to the mailing list first, and then just went Twitter wide and kind of compared the results. And so now from that, actually, it kind of solidified. I was worried that it would be like one of the names, the options. There wasn't any that I really hated. I only put options I liked. But like, if everybody kind of pushed in a direction that I didn't really like, and I can't remember what I sent it to my wife and got her to vote, and I was like, oh shoot, you tied it now, because she voted for the one that was a little less. But anyways, so it looks like a name's kind of come through for that. Now I'm just deciding on, okay, got some confirmation, registered domain name, and get started now is the next step. So I've kind of been documenting, rather than blogging or whatever, it's been through the newsletter and kind of just documenting in that way. And so you can follow along if you want, sign up, and obviously you can unsubscribe at any point, and then we'll go from there and sort of let you know about next steps as we kind of work it out a bit together. Obviously I'm driving it, but like, I think you can attest to the fact that I'm more than probably a little bit too erring on the side of getting reader or listener feedback and decision making. But rather than sitting on an idea and never going anywhere with it, it's kind of like, that's something I'm trying to push forward with. So
if you can get it open, then we can shout at you how you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So you can follow the show at on Twitter, twitter.com/SMYM_FM. I do have an underscore there. I'm iChris on Twitter. And then the main one is just Goodstuff FM on Twitter, or Goodstuff.fm is the website. And there's also a link on the show page if you want to be interviewed on a future episode of the show. I think next week-ish, Kyle will be back. I forget what the schedule is off the top of my head, but Kyle and I'll be back chatting about podcasting. And then there's still a few more folks to chat with and interview. And just like Andrew, if you want to be on the show, feel free. And I don't think it's too scary to do, hopefully.
Nope.
And we'll have a good chat about podcasting. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing wherever you happen to be in the world. And I'll talk again next episode. Bye. All right.
Thank you. Good God, you let me waffle for so long. Thank you so much.
I was going to say before, you mentioned that waffle. On the YouTube podcast, there's a Irish guy. I think he lives in England right now. I can't remember. I can never keep them straight whether he's in England. He's Irish though. But yeah, he said something about waffling, and that was the first I'd heard of that phrase, which is obviously just going on, I'm assuming, or like talking too long, or
wittering on and on and on.
Yeah, that's the best part.
That's why I've got a podcast, That's why I went over 3 hours with that poor chap in Finland. It was me talking. I've got better at that now as well. I let them talk more.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of the fun, and that's recognizing the power of editing that you have later.
Yeah,
but
and I notice how often I talk over people as well, because I'm terribly rude.
Oh no, it's all good. I mean, it's hard with Skype too because you never know if or whatever technology, but you can't quite tell if somebody's listening or not listening, but finished, and then you're ready to jump in, but you don't want dead air, and so cool. Well, I think I grabbed all the links along the way that we discussed. I think I've got everything, and from what you sent me too. So I don't think there's anything else that I'll need from you. Just your audio, and I'll turn off the live stream. So if you're watching this somewhere, happen to watch, we went to an hour 20. So if you're still watching or you just jumped to an hour 20-ish and you're wondering what this is, it's a podcast that I do live on Twitch or Mixer or Periscope, and we record it and then it gets published and edited later. Goodstuff.fm is the website. Show Me Your Mic is the name of the show on Good Stuff, and this is episode number 122 to find it there. Thanks for watching.